What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now Plus. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to review Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, a film that I actually saw in theaters. It happens ever so rarely nowadays, but when I go out, I obviously want to give you guys a review of what I saw, and let's just jump right into it. I actually really like this movie. I think, to sum this movie up, I think I said this on Twitter too, just a fun mess of a time. And I mean, that's the first thing I told my wife, when the lights began to not dim, when they actually came back. I just said, like, that was a mess of a movie. But I feel like, and I don't know this for sure because I can't look at myself in the theater, I feel like I was smiling the whole time. Like, a couple jokes made me laugh. I actually feel I was almost one of the only people in the theater laughing at some of the ones, but I actually just had a really fun time with the movie whenever a returning character was on screen. Whenever Catherine O'Hara was doing literally anything, my wife and I got into Schitt's Creek over the last, I'd say probably like a 12-month kind of period, and I think she's just incredible. I think she's pretty similar to Moira in Schitt's Creek, but whenever she was on screen, she looked like she was having a blast the whole time. And honestly, I thought a lot of the comedy was just delivered through her. So I would give her a 10 out of 10. I would give her delivery a 10 out of 10. But I mean, I feel like that kind of just went throughout the entire movie. I really feel like everybody on set was having a real fun time. Now, some of them, like Jenna Ortega, her character, kind of darker, right? Kind of reminds you of like Lydia in the original Beetlejuice, where it's more like reserved, right? Although she has kind of like coming out moments, like whenever she kind of gets excited, kind of conveyed through the eyes, right? Where you could tell like she feels some sort of emotion, even though she maybe can't convey it. That happened a few times throughout the film. So while some of them were a little bit more laid back, because I think that's what their characters were, right? Lydia, Astrid, they're not those type of characters that are going to exude like a massive personality, but I still think you could tell that everybody was having fun. Michael Keaton, I thought, was a freaking blast. I'm probably going to go into spoilers relatively early in this video just because I do think the story was a convoluted mess where just one thing led to one thing happens so that another thing can happen. And there really doesn't have any rhyme or reason in terms of like lore and things like that. I really don't think a lot of that stuff was present in this movie. And I think that's the easiest way to sum it up. If you enjoyed the first one, I think you're going to like kind of the personality, because this feels like a 80s or 90s type movie. This feels like Tim Burton is back, to be honest with you. It's got the coloring. It's got, there's even claymation in one part of it, not to give away what it was. It felt very Tim Burton-esque. The music was phenomenal. It puts you back, and I don't know, Beetlejuice has become a family staple, with the family that I have here, where every Halloween or every October season, we watch a series of Halloween movies, and Beetlejuice wasn't always on that list, but I would say maybe 5 or 6 years ago it became a part of it. I know my mom has always really loved the movies. That kind of rubbed off on me, and that kind of rubbed off on my family, and we have a blast with it. We really like the original. I don't think this is as good. My wife might disagree, as my wife was telling me she thinks this is a 10 out of 10 movie. I think she had an absolute blast the entire time, which is great. I think that really summarizes the film. I think it was messy, and I don't think it was as well put together as the first movie, but it had comedy. It had horror-like elements, but in like the Tim Burton way, right? Where violence was almost like comedic and over the top on purpose, right? But there was a couple like jump out moments that I was wondering, like, because my daughter, was watching, and I was like, hopefully she's going to be okay. I don't think the movie was that bad, for a younger person, but there were a couple like, horror elements to the movie. But I don't know, it felt different. That's another thing I want to kind of convey before we get into spoilers. Because of the Tim Burton thing, because it's very reminiscent of the original Beetlejuice, you don't see a lot of movies that are like put together in the way that this is. And you could go the CGI route, right, where it's like so much of this movie was practical, and like the sandworm and things like that, freaking loved it, right? But the entire movie kind of feels off. It feels different than what you would get in other films, and I really appreciate that. And I don't know if I gravitate to it more because I'm kind of a normie, to be honest with you, right? But I liked the different kind of approach. Again, though, it was just a mess in terms of like storytelling. Not that, I mean, it had moments. There was a couple threads that I thought were actually really good. I thought they were going somewhere, and then none of them really went anywhere, but we'll talk about that in a second. And you could, obviously, maybe you could dock points, you could say that's a weakness, but I honestly had a blast. And like I said, I mean, I felt that I was smiling the entire time. Whenever one of these characters returning or new, I think everybody did a great job in like the personality that they were given. I was just having a fun time with the movie. So that's how I classify it. It's a fun time, but if you're going to kind of like take it serious and you're gonna, and I'm not saying like microanalyzing is a bad thing. I tend to microanalyze. Honestly, that's kind of my personality or part of it. But if you're gonna do that, if you're really gonna sit there and kind of go through everything, I don't think you're gonna be able to, with a movie like this. And that's okay for me, for the price that I paid, for what I was kind of expecting of this movie. I had an awesome time. Honestly, I had a blast. I had a lot of fun, and that would kind of be my end thought. So just really quickly, let me just kind of vent about a couple spoiler type things, and I'll let you guys out of here. Of course, you could click away at any point, but okay, in terms of spoilers, just to talk about some of the threads, the story threads, I actually really liked that Beetlejuice was almost a hero, throughout the entire movie. My wife and I were talking about on the way home, like, he kind of gets shafted the entire time because, he wants to get married, and I don't think that's a good idea, but, he really wants it, and he helps everybody. He helps, in the first one, and just generally his persona, right, is he helps with, like, the stipulation. But in this one, he, like, legitimately chips in. In the first one, he doesn't really, it's more of, like, the fake promise that he'll help you with, like, your problems or get things out that aren't supposed to be there, right? Kind of a purge the human type thing. But in this one, he legitimately, he saves Astrid. Astrid was literally going to be sent away, and, with the life swap, actually, she was going to get sent away. Lydia saved her, but the transfer of life was going to happen if he didn't stamp it. And by the way, he just gets to do whatever, doesn't he? Right? He's just in the afterlife. He goes around. I guess he's brought in for police investigations. I mean, obviously, it included him, so that's why. But he's got his own little office, with his, all these different workers. But he can also just pose as like an international, like a passport agent. He can do kind of whatever he wants. So I thought that in it of itself was kind of fun. But he helps everybody. He helps even Delia, like, he barely knows her. I guess he knew her once, but, he comes to her aid, and he kind of just chimes in and tells people what they, need to hear, or like what they want to, to figure something out. He does that the entire film. So I kind of feel bad because he gets a very quick exit. The entire wedding scene I thought was just that was one of the moments, because it's actually quite long. It was kind of all over the place. Like, you got this musical thing. Again, it's kind of a spectacle. Like, I liked it. It paralleled pretty well the first movie, with them spinning around and, floating and all that stuff. So I like some of, like, the imagery and some of the themes and stuff. But, I mean, like, so much just happens in that, like, 5-10 minutes. You vanquish his evil ex, which I really thought that was going somewhere. And she was built up as, like, this, like, serious villain. I thought they were all going to team up to go against her. And then she just gets taken out, like, in a heartbeat. Like, she really doesn't pose a threat to Beetlejuice at all, I guess, right? He does a little bit of like the Olay kind of thing, and then the snake just eats them. And also, by the way, in terms of him massively helping, for some reason, everybody got it except for Lydia, that the soon-to-be husband is just not a good guy, right? He's using her. He doesn't actually believe. He's just doing it for money. He even, with the truth serum, he does it to him too. So he saves her daughter. He shows her what everybody else saw, but she didn't see, that he's just using her. He does legit helpful things the entire movie, and then, she just kind of gets rid of him. I understand. I don't expect them to get together or anything like that, but it's just kind of a weird situation. But that did allow, I feel, Beetlejuice / Michael Keaton to kind of do whatever. You know what I mean? Just to go off script, or I don't even know if he said, I think in interviews, Michael Keaton, that like they stuck to the script, but it felt very like off the cuff, right? The entire movie. So I really did like that. It's just, you kind of had to make his character go all over the place in order to get that out of him. And again, that's a theme. Like, everything happening at the end there was plenty of exposition, here and there. Astrid's father, Lydia's ex-husband, that just kind of happens. I didn't even know if they were I didn't think they would show him. The boyfriend, Astrid's, I guess soon-to-be boyfriend or whatever, and then they swapped the life. he was really interesting, and I kind of could sense like the parents were dead. You know, that was obviously something you can kind of notice right away. I didn't actually think he was dead, so that was an interesting. I thought that was actually a pretty big twist, and again, I liked that. Like he tricks her, and just the idea of like the parents and kind of the build up there. But then everything just gets told to you, right? Like he's a murderer, he killed the parents, all that stuff. But then that gets resolved so easily. Like he just outright tells her the plan. There's no like build up to like a switcheroo. He just tells her that I'm evil and we're swapping now, and so you're dead now. And then, she gets saved, and he just gets dispatched. Beetlejuice literally murders the guy twice, right? Puts him into the place down under, let's say, right? So it's like certain things like that just happen, and they happen so quick, almost without any care, just to kind of get you on to the next thing. Even the ending, right? Where it's all like a nightmare, I guess, and Jenna Ortega, after she gets married, she freaking has a kid, and then the kid is Beetlejuice's kid. Like, I had no idea at a certain point where that was going. I was like, wow, they're really jumping through her life to show, I don't know, this, connection between mom and daughter, but she's having a kid. It's like, geez, Jenna Ortega, that's nuts. And then, they pull the rug out from under you, and obviously that was, I guess, all a nightmare, showing that Beetlejuice still has some sort of, kind of cards to play, I guess. So, things like that, it's just a mess. But honestly, all of those times, I was still interested. Maybe it's because, like, I'm trying to figure out what's going on, but I was interested in everything that was happening, and I just had a lot of fun throughout. Like I said, there's plenty of jokes. There's plenty of, I guess, parallels between this and the first one, and I was just interested in, like, anything any of these characters had to say. I really appreciate the movie while also acknowledging that it's kind of a mess, and I don't know if there probably should have been another person that jumped in to say, hey, do we want to like iron out some of this stuff, or do you just want to kind of go for it? And maybe there was, and they just said, no, we're just having fun. Like, just let these things happen. And I guess that's okay. Oh, and before I go, really, really quickly, Bob didn't steal the show. I think Delia honestly stole the show, but Bob I thought was a great character and did not deserve the fate that he actually had. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next